Hi everyone, we're back again for another story time. I have two stories and a craft at the end, just like normal, and I want to tell you again about our summer reading. We have all these fun packets of things to do, and there's one for each week of the summer, and it's okay if you start late because you can do it whenever you want. There's all sorts of fun things to do, fun ideas, fun things to learn. Also, when you sign up, you get a bag of fun crafting supplies. All you have to do is call us at the Gilbert Public Library, and our phone number is 748-2230. Okay? So here's our first story. The story is called The Legend of Minnesota by Kathy Jo Wargin. The definition for the word Minnesota is known to most as the Dakota word for sky-tinted waters. Long ago, in the land of lakes, where pine-wrapped bays made half-moon shapes, among ancient rocky vales was one lake known to all. As dark and deep as the moonless night, it became a sea of yellow and orange with every setting sun, and was so named for its colors, vermilion. Beyond this lake was a mountain, grim and gray and sacred, where the riches of time not yet discovered, the ore of iron, lay quietly stowed and waiting. To its people, the Ojibwe, the land was an abundant place. There were blueberries to pick and fish to spear, grains of wild rice to harvest, and maple sap to boil into hard cakes of sugar. It was a time of plenty, but it was not a time of peace. The Ojibwe were at war with the Dakota, and the two tribes had not seen calm in many years. One night, as the harvest moon poured its gold upon the mountain, the Ojibwe chief called a meeting. The time had come to light a fire to honor a departed loved one, long buried upon the gray mountain not far beyond. This was a task of honor, and the people listened carefully to the chief's request. But when the chief finished speaking, nobody rose to accept the duty. They were weak from skirmishes and with the Dakota, and wary of the danger this task would pose. If one of them were discovered while making the journey, the Dakota would learn of their camp, and misfortune might follow. The air was stone-cold quiet, except for the snap of the fire and the rustle of embers. The silence drew heavy upon them until a young girl stepped forward through the smoke. Her name was Morning Fawn, and as she looked to the chief, she said, "I will do this." A milk-white falcon flew above her head, skimming many times to circle above her. To all, it was a sign that fate had chosen her for this dangerous task. At dawn, Morning Fawn followed a footpath into the woods. She stepped across a slow-moving stream where bald eagles made great nests in pine trees above her. She walked beside ponds where yellow and white water lilies rested upon the surface like night stars that had fallen from the sky. She rested among stands of white birch and balsam poplar, and then walked until the path became a soft carpet of aged pine needles broken by knotted cedar roots that twisted their way across the forest floor. As Morning Fawn reached the sacred place, she felt at peace with her task and prepared for her fate. She carefully lit the flame and bowed her head. Now it was time to make the journey home. As she made her way through the woods, she saw a young Dakota brave lying upon the ground. At first, Morning Fawn stood still and silent as a mother deer hiding her young in an open meadow. But when her eyes met his, she could tell that he was very ill and did not have long to live. Pale and weak, he was warm to the touch. Morning Fawn made him a bed out of leaves and started a fire to cook some broth. He lay there quietly as she stroked his hair with a friendly touch. Although barely able to speak, he told her an old healing secret. Doing as he said, Morning Fawn gathered the roots of the balsam poplar and carefully made a special medicine for him. Morning Fawn remained with the Dakota Brave for 3 days and 3 nights. With her help, she grew stronger and was no longer pale. During this time, he told her of his home and where bright meadows went sweeping toward the sun, and she told him of shady granite resting spots near the edge of the red-stained lake. He sang to her about the shaggy bison and the great thunder they made during the hunt, and she motioned upward to describe the dancing skies and how bands of blue and green and pink seemed to flash in the night. They laughed often and liked each other very much, but deep inside, Morning Fawn knew they would not be able to remain together. Until their bands were no longer enemies, such a friendship would not be allowed. Back at the village, there was great worry when Morning Fawn had not returned after the sacred fire was lit. 2 braves went to find her and came upon Morning Fawn with the Dakota Brave. Worried the boy might tell his tribe about the Ojibwe camp, they quickly took him prisoner. When they reached the village, the boy was set apart from the others. He was lonely and frightened, and Morning Fawn wanted to help him. That night, when the last fire cooled and the village was sleeping, Morning Fawn set him free. The pair slipped quietly into the forest to a stand of balsam poplar. Then, as the dusky moon cast shadows upon their faces, Morning Fawn told him to go away. But the Dakota boy did not understand. He did not want to leave his friend. She had saved his life, and he wanted to be with her always. Morning Fawn did not want harm to come his way, so she insisted he leave. Still, he did not understand. He begged to stay while she kept telling him to go away. With tears in his eyes, he asked her to live with him upon the prairie, but Morning Fawn refused. Dawn was breaking, and she was worried that he might be discovered. At last, Morning Fawn knew of only one way to make him go home. Although she cared for him very much, Morning Fawn told him otherwise and ordered him to leave. When others learned what Morning Fawn had let the boy free, they would not look in her direction or speak to her. This went on for days and weeks, and Morning Fawn felt sad and alone. Soon, a terrible sickness fell upon the village. People lay on their beds moaning with pain and fever, and no cure was known. Morning Fawn watched as people were fading into a weak and weary sleep. Then she remembered the secret the Dakota boy had shared. Doing as he had taught her, she gathered the root of the balsam poplar and made the healing balm, and went from bed to bed. One by one, the sick began to feel better, and others who lay waiting began to call out for her. Manusesha, Manusesha, they called, for that was the name by which they knew the balsam poplar. For many days, the sick kept calling out to her, Manusesha, Manusesha, and in time, she was able to heal them all. So, in the spirit of her renewed love for her, they named her Manusesha, and all was forgiven. The time came for the Ojibwe to move their camp. When they did, Manusesha stayed behind, remaining beneath the balsam poplar. Every evening she sang her farewell to the Dakota boy, and her words carried high upon the wind and throughout the land. Each year, as her people passed the balsam poplar, they would call out to her, Manusesha, Manusesha, as a sign of respect. Years passed, and Manusesha grew old and small, withering deep into the earth itself. Since that time, generations still call out her name when they pass the balsam poplar, the name chosen to address the beautiful land that lay west of the great unsalted sea. And as it came to be spoken in new accents and languages through time, we still hear her name today, known throughout the world and in the hearts of those who will love her always. Manusesha, Manusesha, Minnesota, Minnesota. And that's the end. Okay? That was a good one. Our second story is called Apple Cider Making Days by Anne Purmell. Okay, here we go. Apple Cider Making Days. Grandpa drives the tractor that pulls the wagon that carries Alex and Abigail and all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. It is fall, and these are cider making days on Grandpa's apple farm. Grandpa grows dwarf apple trees that are about as tall as a person. Alex and Abigail pick apples from the lower branches with the cousins. The grown-ups pick the apples growing near the tops of the trees. Alex and Abigail each take a handle and carry their wooden bushel basket full of apples to the wagon. Together, they hoist the basket of bright red apples into the wagon. When the wagon is full, Grandpa drives the tractor to the barn. Alex and Abigail bump along on a bench over the apples in the wagon. Grandpa backs the wagon into the barn until it stands in front of the apple sorter. Alex and Abigail unload the apples into the sorter barrel. Cousins run into the barn and take their places among the conveyor belt beside Abigail and Alex. Grandpa flips the sorter switch to on. The sorting machine roars as loud as an airplane inside the barn. The conveyor belt moves along and apples fall onto it from the barrel. Alex and Abigail and the cousins sort the perfect apples from the not so perfect apples. The perfect apples move along toward the showers, where a spray of water washes them clean. They tumble across soft foam-padded rubber rollers that gently dry them. Aunts and uncles take the clean, dry, shiny apples and bag them to sell. They carry the bags to the cold storage room. It's always about 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius inside. Brr! These are called eating apples. Alex and Abigail and the cousins toss the apples that are bruised or oddly shaped into another conveyor belt for cider. The cider apples travel in a straight line up a slant as steep as a ski slope before they drop down into a grater with sharp metal blades. They are chopped into small pieces, which Grandpa calls apple mush. The apple mush is sucked up through the wide, bendable tubing. The uncles lay a steel frame under the cider press. They cover it with a clean burlap cloth. When the cloth is flat, Grandpa squirts gallons and gallons of apple mush onto it. After the cloth is full, the uncles fold it so the sides meet in the middle. They set a heavy rack on top. They repeat these steps until a huge pile of frames, cloths full of apple mush, and racks are piled on top of one another. Then, Grandpa slowly lowers the pancake-flat steel plate of the cider press. This squeezes the cider juice out of the apple mush. As more and more pressure is exerted, the pile gets thinner. The air is filled with a strong, sweet apple smell. At last, the golden brown liquid begins to flow through clear tubing into a giant-sized steel holding tank. The cider is cooled and stored there until it is needed to fill jugs for people to buy. Tomorrow, Grandpa will push open the heavy wooden door to the apple barn. He will crank the red and white striped awning down until it spreads across the doorway. Then, the apple barn will be open for business. Many cars will park along the long, gravel-covered drive that leads to the apple barn. City people will drive out into the country to buy jugs of Grandpa's cider, bags of eating apples, and Grandma's homemade donuts. Tomorrow, Alex, Abigail, the aunts, uncles, and cousins will work hard all day long, waiting on people in the store, running warm donuts down from the farmhouse, pulling bags of apples from the cold storage room, and keeping the cider flowing. Today is the best cider-making day of all. It is the day Alex and Abigail, aunts, uncles, cousins, Grandpa, and Grandma drink the first sweet cider, the cider they all helped to make. How nice is that? Okay, now I'm going to show you a project that you can do, and then I'll show you the one that it's step by step. So here's one that I made. I cut out an M from a piece of cardstock, but cardboard would be better, like a cereal box or something. Then you go outside and just find all sorts of things that are from Minnesota. I've got these little helicopters, I've got some rocks and different pine cones, I've got feathers and flowers, all sorts of things. I had a pine branch here, but it died and fell off. So that's one thing, and it's super fun to do, and it looks so pretty even when all the things are kind of dead. The next thing, the step-by-step thing I'm going to show you is on a paper plate. I like my paper plate activities. So what you're going to do is draw a bird and some eggs. It doesn't matter how many eggs, you can do as many or as few as you want. You don't even need to do eggs. Do what you want. This is what I'm showing you. Make it your own. Then you color them. I did a bluebird because I thought it looked pretty, and I didn't color my eggs, but that's okay. You can color yours if you want to. Okay. And then you take your paper plate and you cover one half, or you color one half blue, and then the bottom part you want to make it look like a nest. This is just what I did. Again, make it your own. Go outside, find some feathers, find some actual sticks. You can put string in there, like whatever you think a bird might use to make a nest, put it in there. It'll look great, I bet. And then you just want to glue all the things on. There's my bird and her eggs, and I put some fake feathers in there because I couldn't find any real ones, which made me sad, but that's okay. This is what I got. Super cute, and then you can put it on your window, you can hang it on the fridge, whatever. Just make it yours and do what you like. Another thing you can do is go to the beach and get some sand and make a underwater scene where the top half is blue and the bottom part is sand, and then draw yourself a fish and some seaweed and just have fun with it. Do whatever you like. Do something that reminds you of Minnesota. Yeah. So thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. Bye.